Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to share a story that really stuck with me. A story about love, choices, and the harsh realities that sometimes test the strongest bonds. It's Mark's story, and it truly makes you wonder what really matters in life. Mark believed in a love that could conquer all. You know, the kind of love where money, status, distance, none of it could stand in the way if two people truly cared for each other. And for a long time, that belief was his whole world, all thanks to Sarah. They met in college. Mark described Sarah as having this incredible light in her eyes, a calm but confident smile that made him feel like everything in the world was going to be just fine. Mark wasn't exactly rolling in money. He worked multiple part-time jobs just to get by, while Sarah was studying business, dreaming big of opening her own company one day. They didn't have much, materially speaking, but what they had felt so incredibly real. He talks about walking around the city at night, holding hands, laughing at the silliest things, like how the street vendor's coffee always tasted a bit burnt, but they'd drink it anyway because it was all they could afford. He'd look at her and just think, this is happiness. Pure, simple, unadulterated happiness. Now, Sarah wasn't from a poor family. Her parents had planned well, and she even had an inheritance waiting for her from a grandfather. But she never, ever bragged about it. She used to say, money's just a tool, Mark. It doesn't define me. And Mark, he believed her completely. Why wouldn't he? She seemed so genuine. After college, they took the plunge and moved in together. A tiny apartment with old walls, a fridge that sounded like a tractor, and a leaky faucet Mark could never quite fix. But it was their asterisk home. They worked their tails off. Mark landed a job at a local marketing firm, and Sarah started freelancing while pouring her heart into her dream business, a small clothing brand she lovingly called Luna Threads. Life wasn't always a picnic, though rent was sometimes late. They'd have arguments about bills, about stress, about the grind of everyday life. But here's the thing. No matter how tough it got, they always found their way back to each other. Mark thought, this is it. This is what love is. Fighting through life, together. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Sarah started talking about wanting more. Not just more money, which made sense for her business, but more asterisk. Life asterisk. She wanted to travel, to own beautiful things, to go to fancy dinners where the conversations revolved around stocks and investments, not just their next paycheck. At first, Mark didn't overthink it. He figured she was just dreaming bigger, having a year, and he was totally on board to support that. But the way she saw the world, it was changing. She stopped laughing at the small, simple joys they used to share. Their familiar comforts, the little traditions, started to feel like inconveniences to her. Then, David walked into their lives, and Mark says he came in like a bright flash, confident, effortlessly smooth, and ridiculously wealthy. David owned multiple businesses, drove the kind of cars you only saw in magazines, wore tailored suits, and always seemed to be surrounded by people who hung on his every word. Sarah met him at one of her business networking events. She came home that night, absolutely buzzing, talking about how inspiring he was. He's not just rich, she told Mark. He's smart. He started from nothing and built everything with his own hands. Mark, ever supportive, just smiled and said, that's great, babe. Maybe you can learn something from him for your business, but... Then, he felt a knot in his stomach. It wasn't just admiration in her voice. It was something else, a kind of fascination. Over the next few weeks, Sarah started spending more and more time at meetings. She'd come home later, sometimes with new clothes, new perfumes, things Mark hadn't seen her buy before. When they asked it, she'd brush it off. It's just part of networking. Mark, I have to look the part if I want Luna Threads to succeed. Mark desperately wanted to believe her. He kept telling himself that she was just chasing success, that deep down, she still loved him. But lying beside her at night, echoed fail it, the growing distance between them, a silent chasm widening with each passing day. Then one evening, she came home utterly quiet. He knew something was wrong. When he gently asked, she spoke softly, her voice barely a whisper. Mark, Do you ever think maybe we're just stuck? Stuck? He asked, genuinely confused. She wouldn't meet his eyes, instead looking down at the floor. We've been doing the same thing for years. Same apartment, same jobs, same struggles. Don't you want more out of life? Mark didn't know what to say. Of course, he wanted more. Who doesn't? But he also held this deep-seated belief that true happiness wasn't measured by possessions or a lavish lifestyle. He took her hand and said, I want more too, Sarah. But I want it with you. We can build it together. She smiled, but it was a sad, knowing smile. Like she already understood something he hadn't grasped yet. The next month was a blur of growing unease. Sarah became even more distant, always distracted, glued to her phone, the warmth in her voice, that light in her eyes he'd fallen in love with. See him Ed too, Deem. Then, one quiet Sunday morning, she uttered the words that completely shattered his world. Mark, I think I need to move on. At first, he laughed nervously, a disbelieving, hollow sound. What do you mean? She said, her voice barely audible. I've met someone. His name is David. He believes in me. He can give me opportunities I could never have here, with you. Mark felt like all the air had been sucked out of his lungs. His chest tightened. His head started to spin. Sarah, are you serious? She simply nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Mark. You've been so good to me, truly. But I can't stay in the same place forever. He couldn't even speak. The weight in his chest was crushing. He managed to choke out one question, the one that had been nagging at him for weeks. Is it because he's rich? She hesitated, and that hesitation, that brief pause, said everything he needed to know. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, It's not just that. He can help me build my dream. You'll be fine, Mark. You're strong. You'll move on. Move on. How do you move on from someone who was quite literally your entire world? The day she left, it was eerily quiet. No drama, no shouting, just the sound of her packing her things neatly. A quiet heartbreak. Mark watched her walk away with her suitcase, and it felt like the entire world had lost its color, turning to shades of gray. 4 days, he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every single corner of their small apartment echoed with her memory. The coffee mug she used, the faint scent of a perfume that still lingered in the air. His friends tried to comfort him, telling him he'd be okay, that he'd find someone new, but they didn't understand. Sarah wasn't just a girlfriend. She was Asterisk, his person. Asterisk. He tried to convince himself that maybe she'd come back, that maybe, after experiencing David's shiny, perfect world, she'd realize what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away. But deep down, a painful truth resonated with him. When someone leaves for money, they rarely ever come back for love. Still, a part of him, that old, hopeful part, wished she'd find whatever it was she was looking for, even if it wasn't with him. Because love, real love, doesn't just switch off like a light. It lingers, it hurts quietly, a constant ache no one else can see. And as much as he hated to admit it, he still loved her. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Because the next time Mark would see Sarah, she wouldn't be glowing in luxury, surrounded by everything she ever wanted. She would be broken, desperate, and standing right on his doorstep, begging for help. Wow, this story really takes you on a roller coaster, doesn't it? What do you all think about Sarah's choices? Have you ever had your beliefs about love challenged so deeply? Let me know in the comments below. After Sarah left, the silence in my apartment was almost unbearable. The walls, once filled with laughter, now felt cold and empty. Her clothes were gone. Her shoes by the door were missing. Even her toothbrush, all gone. Only her scent remained faintly on the pillow, fading a little more every day. I tried to tell myself that I was fine, that people break up all the time. But it wasn't true. She wasn't just someone I dated. She was my best friend, my partner, my reason for waking up and trying harder. Every little thing reminded me of her. The coffee mug she used every morning. The playlist we listened to on late drives. Even the stupid leaky faucet, she used to laugh at it. And now the dripping sound just echoed in the empty kitchen. For weeks, I went through life like a ghost. You went to work, came home, stared at the same four walls, and asked myself what I did wrong. Was I not enough? Was love not enough anymore? She said she wanted more, but all I could think was I would have given her everything if she had just stayed. Meanwhile, I'd sometimes see her name pop up on social media. Pictures from fancy restaurants, weekend trips, shiny clothes. She looked happy. She looked like she belonged in a different world now. A world I couldn't afford. Every photo had David in it. Tall, confident. The kind of man who looked like he never had to worry about rent or bills. He had that perfect smile. The kind that made people believe every word he said. I stopped looking after a while. It hurt too much to see her smiling next to the man she left me for. I wanted to wait her. I really did. But a part of me still whispered, she's just chasing her dream, Mark. Maybe she's finally happy. So I decided to move on to, or at least pretend I was. I started working longer hours, trying to drown the pain and busyness. My boss noticed my effort and gave me more responsibility. Primero told myself if Sarah wants success, I'll get mine too, just differently. No shortcuts, no rich mentors, just hard work. But healing is never simple. Some nights, I'd lie awake, wondering if she ever thought about me, if she missed the small things, the cheap coffee, the slow mornings, the talks about life when everything felt uncertain but honest. I guess what hurt most wasn't that she left. It was that she left for money. Like all the love we built suddenly had a price tag, and David could afford it better than me. Months passed, winter came, and with it, a kind of calm. I had accepted that she was gone. I still loved her, but I was learning to live without her. Some wounds don't close. They just stop bleeding. Then one evening, I ran into an old friend of hers, Lena, at a grocery store. She recognized me instantly. "Oh, Mark." "Hey," she said, smiling awkwardly. I could tell she didn't know what to say. We talked a bit. I asked, "How's Sarah?" Lena hesitated. She's living the dream, I guess. You know, fancy places, business trips with David. He's some kind of investment genius, right? I nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what she said." "She's doing well," Lena added, but her voice didn't sound convincing. Then she quickly changed the topic. Something in her eyes told me there was more to the story, but I didn't press. I didn't want to seem like the heartbroken ex who couldn't move on, even though that is exactly what I was. Meanwhile, Sarah's life looked golden from the outside. David took her to private events, luxury parties, and exclusive meetings. People admired her. She was beautiful, charming, and now rich by association. He told her his company was expanding real estate, tech startups, and private funds. Everything he touched seemed to turn to gold. He talked big, multi-level investment cycles, high-yield portfolios, and next-gen profit models. Words that sounded smart, even if most people didn't understand them. Sarah believed every word. After all, he lived the life he preached. Expensive suits, top-tier cars, luxury pen. And unlike me, he didn't just talk about dreams. He made them real, or so she thought. David treated her well. At least in the beginning. He bought her gifts, took her to dinners overlooking the city, told her she was meant for bigger things. For a girl who once lived in a small apartment with a man fixing leaks, it felt like a fairy tale. But fairy tales have a cost, and Sarah didn't realize hers was already being written. A few months after, they started living together. David began to talk about a new investment round. He told her it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He said, "Sarah, you're smart. You should invest in this too. Don't just be the investor's girlfriend. Be a partner." She hesitated at first. "But all I have is my inheritance. That's my safety net." David smiled and held her hand. "And what better way to use it than to make it grow? Trust me. I'll take care of everything." Those words, "trust me," were all she needed to hear. Sarah transferred a large part of her inheritance into David's project. He praised her for being bold, for believing in the vision. And for a while, everything looked perfect. The returns were coming in. Investors were happy. Sarah thought she had made the best decision of her life. Back in my world, I didn't know any of this. I was slowly healing. Even started seeing someone casually. Get didn't go anywhere serious. But I still thought about Sarah, sometimes not with anger, but with a quiet sadness. Every now and then, I'd dream about her sitting across from me in that tiny cafe we used to go to, smiling like the world was simple again. Then I'd wake up and remind myself that some stories just don't get happy endings. But life, as it often does, had a strange way of circling back. Because while I was learning to live again, Sarah's perfect life was starting to crumble, and she had no idea that the man she trusted, the one she gave up everything for, was sitting on a foundation built entirely on lies. At first, Sarah truly believed she had made the best choice of her life. Everything looked so perfect: the expensive dinners, the luxurious vacations, the endless promises of success. David was charming, confident, and so sure of himself that people just couldn't help but believe in him. He had that rare kind of charisma that made lies sound like destiny. Every morning, Sarah would wake up in a penthouse overlooking the city. The view stretched from miles-tall buildings, glowing lights, everything she once dreamed of when she lived in that small apartment with me. Her new life sparkled. Her friends envied her. She wore designer clothes, attended charity events, and mingled with people who talked about millions like it was pocket change. In those moments, Sarah convinced herself she had made the right decision. She'd look at David and think, this is what real success feels like. But success built on deceit always hides its cracks. David told her his company, Davenport Holdings, was an investment network that used what he called smart cycles, taking funds from one project, flipping them into another, and the Canadian guaranteed high returns. Sarah didn't understand all the details, but she didn't question him. After all, investors were getting paid every single month, like clockwork. She saw people praising him, calling him a genius, thanking him for changing their lives. It all looked so real, and when David told her, "Sarah, your inheritance is growing faster than you can imagine," she just smiled, completely relieved. She told her parents she was doing great. She told her old friends she was part of something big. She even considered messaging me once, not to brag, but just to show that she was doing okay, that she had built something for herself. But she didn't. Maybe a small part of her still felt a little guilty. Months passed, and the illusion only got stronger. David kept throwing these grand parties, inviting investors from all over. The atmosphere was electric, champagne glasses clinking, people laughing, everyone talking about their growing profits. Sarah loved being a part of it. She even helped manage some of David's clients, sent out emails, and sat in on meetings. He told her she was his lucky charm, the face that people trusted. But slowly, things started to feel off. It began with little things. One day, an investor called Sarah privately. He sounded nervous. "Hey, Sarah, I was supposed to get my payout last week, but it hasn't come through." David said, "There's a small delay. Should I be worried?" Sarah just brushed it off. "Oh no, don't worry about it. These things happen. I'm sure it's just paperwork." But then it happened again. And again, more people started calling. Some were polite, others were angry, and every time Sarah asked David about it, he'd just smile and say, "Don't worry about them, babe. These people panic way too fast. We're just restructuring the payouts. Everything's under control." He said it so confidently that she believed him, at least for a little while. One evening, Sarah overheard David on the phone. His tone was sharp, completely different from his usual smooth talk. "No, you'll tell them they'll get their money next month. I don't care what excuse you use, just stall them." She froze in the hallway. For the very first time, real doubt crept in. That night, when she asked him what was going on, he brushed it off again. "Business pressure," he said. "Investors get impatient. You wouldn't understand, it's just strategy." But she just couldn't shake the unease. The next day, she decided to check her own account. The profits she thought she had made, the numbers looked strange. There were deposits and withdrawals happening at random times, amounts that didn't match what David had promised her. Her heart started to race. When she tried to ask him questions, he would just change the topic or kiss her forehead and say, "You're overthinking again. Trust me." Those two words, trust me, began to sound less like comfort and more like a warning. A few weeks later, Sarah noticed another change. David became distant. He was constantly on his phone, locking himself in his office and snapping at her when she asked simple questions. He started drinking more, too. And then, one night, she saw an email pop up on his laptop screen just for a second, before he slammed it shut. The subject line read, "Urgent, federal inquiry into Davenport Holdings." Her stomach dropped. When she asked him about it, he just exploded. "Why are you snooping around my stuff? Don't you trust me after everything I've done for you?" Sarah was speechless. He had never shouted at her like that before, but now she realized something. David wasn't angry because she didn't trust him. He was angry because she was getting close to the truth. Over the next few days, the world she thought was made of gold started to rust. The news spread fast on online forums, in business circles, even in the local papers. Investment firm under investigation. Possible Ponzi scheme. Hundreds may lose millions. David's name was everywhere. Sarah confronted him one last time, her voice trembling. "David, is it true? Is this all fake?" He didn't answer. He just poured himself another drink and said quietly, "You wouldn't understand the system, Sarah. Money's not real, it's about perception. As long as people believe, it works." She stared at him, tears welling up in her eyes. "So, my inheritance." He looked away. "I used it to keep things running. Don't look at me like that, it's business." Her niece went weak. Everything she had, her savings, her future, her security gone, used to pay fake returns to other people in a game she never even knew she was a part of. Days later, the authorities came. The company was shut down. The accounts were frozen. David was arrested briefly, then released on bail, and then he disappeared. Just like that, Sarah woke up one morning to an empty penthouse. No David. No cars. No jewelry. Everything was seized, repossessed, or had simply been faked to begin with. She sat alone on the cold marble floor, surrounded by a heavy silence. Same kind of silence I had once lived through when she left me. The only difference was, this time, she was the one who had lost everything. Sarah tried to reach out to her friends, but most of them turned away. They didn't want to be connected to a scandal. Some even blamed her, saying she must have known. Her parents were furious their trust was shattered, and their inheritance was gone. She had no money, no home, and no one to call. And for the first time in a very long time, she thought about me. The man she left behind. The man who once promised her, "I'll never let you fall." But she had fallen hard, and now, the only person she could think of was the one she had broken. And when Sarah and I were inseparable, we were young, we were happy. And we had that easy kind of love where laughter came naturally, and the world felt simple. We didn't have much, but we had peace. I'll never forget those days on the beach, sand between our toes, not a care in the world. But as life often does, things got complicated. Sarah started dreaming bigger, wanting more than what our quiet life could offer. And honestly, who can blame anyone for wanting more? The problem was, the more she sought led her down a path that eventually left her completely lost. She met David, a man who promised her the world, a glittering, golden life filled with luxury. And she chose it. She chose him, and that glamorous future, over me, and the simple life we built. It hurt deeply, but I tried to understand, to move on. And for a long time, I did. My life slowly rebuilt itself. I found a better apartment, got a promotion, started helping my younger brother with his studies. I still thought about Sarah, sure, but less and less. She became a closed chapter, a memory from a different time. Then, one day, the truth came crashing down. David, the powerful man who promised Sarah everything, was a fraudster. And when the truth came out, Sarah's world, that glittering golden world, crumbled overnight. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, angry investors, even people she thought were her friends. Her name was everywhere, not as a success story, but as the girlfriend of the fraudster, the one who must have known. But she didn't. She really, truly didn't. Yet, no one cared. Her penthouse, the symbols of her new life, was being seized. Men in dark suits were taking inventory, and everything, even her personal belongings, was considered purchased under company funds. She was told to leave. It was like that. The life she'd traded love for was gone in an instant. She packed what little she could, most of her expensive items already gone or locked away by the authorities. All those handbags, the jewelry, even the furniture, all assets in an investigation. As she opened a drawer, she found one small photo left behind. It was us, on that beach, laughing, wind in her hair, sand on our shoes. A stark contrast to the chaos she was living. Back then, life was simple. We didn't have much, but we had peace. And staring at that photo, she realized how rare and precious peace truly was. The next few weeks were absolute chaos for Sarah. The government froze all her accounts. Her name was on the news, not as a suspect, but as someone involved. People whispered, even though they didn't know the truth. And David, he vanished without a trace. No calls, no messages, nothing. The man she trusted with everything had left her to face the storm alone. She tried calling him Ober and Ober, but the number was disconnected. That night, she sat in the dark of a tiny motel room, her phone buzzing with missed calls from unknown numbers, angry investors, threats, insults. She cried until her body felt numb. This wasn't just a financial collapse. It was the death of the dreams she had built her choices around. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's money ran out. She sold what little she had left. Clothes, jewelry, anything of value. But it wasn't enough to keep up with rent or bills. She tried to find work, but no one would hire her. Every interview ended the same way. Polite smiles, then rejection. Her name was tainted. At one point, she even thought about leaving the city altogether, but she didn't have the courage or the means. She had nowhere to go. She was completely isolated. Then, one afternoon, she was sitting in a small park, clutching her worn-out handbag. She heard laughter. A couple walked by, holding hands, carefree. Something about them hit her like a knife. For a moment, she saw us back when love was enough. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered under her breath, "Mark, I'm so sorry." That night, she made a decision. She opened her phone, scrolled through old contacts, and found my name. She hadn't called me in over a year. Her hands trembled. Would I even pick up? Would I hang up? The moment I heard her voice, she typed a message but deleted it. Typed again. Deleted. Again. Finally, she just wrote, "Mark, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I need to talk to you. Please." And then she hit send. When I saw her name flash on my phone that night, my heart froze. Sarah calling. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, unsure if I should answer. A part of me wanted to ignore it after everything she'd done, after the way she'd walked out like I was nothing. But another part, the foolish, still human part, wanted to hear her voice again. "So," I answered. Her voice was trembling. "Mark, it's me." "I know," I said quietly. "It's been a while." There was a long pause. "I didn't know who else to call," she whispered. I'm in a really bad place right now." Something in her tone broke me a little. This wasn't a confident woman who left me for a rich man. This was someone broken, scared, and lost. I took a deep breath. "What happened, Sarah?" She hesitated, then said, "David's gone. Everything's gone. The business was fake, Mark. I lost everything. My money, my family's inheritance, even my friends. I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to say, "You made your choice," but another part, the part that still remembered her laugh, her kindness, her love, couldn't. I said softly, "Where are you?" She gave me the address of a small, run-down motel. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please, Mark. I just need someone to talk to. I hesitated for a long time after she hung up. Every logical part of me said, don't go. But my heart, the same heart she once broke, whispered something else. A few hours later, I was standing outside that motel when she opened the door. My breath caught. She looked nothing like the woman I remembered. Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen, her face pale and tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, the kind that come from nights of crying and no sleep. For a second, we just stood there, silent. Then she whispered, "You came." I nodded. Yeah, I did. And as I looked at her, the woman who once chose money over love, I realized something strange. I didn't feel anger, just sadness. Sad for her, for me, for everything we lost trying to chase a life that was never real. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes what we think we want, what glitters and shines, isn't always what's truly valuable. It's about how life can flip on a dime and how the choices we make, especially when we're chasing something external, can have profound consequences. It also speaks to the resilience of the human spirit and, perhaps, the enduring nature of compassion, even after heartbreak. Mons. Passed. The city moved on, just as it always does when a scandal fades from the headlines. But for Sarah, the noise never stopped. Her phone never rang, and her name became a warning whispered in charity lines and homeless shelters. David had vanished without a trace. Some said he'd fled abroad. Others claimed he was hiding under a new name. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Sarah was broke, homeless, and utterly alone. Her family disowned her after she lost the inheritance they had spent decades building. Her so-called friends blocked her number the moment her credit card stopped working. There were days she couldn't even afford food. She found a room in a rundown hostel outside of town, cleaning rooms just to survive. Each time she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The designer clothes, the pride, the arrogance, all gone. Only tired eyes and a deep, gnawing guilt remained. One evening, as she walked past a small coffee shop, she saw a familiar face through the window. It was Mark. He was sitting alone, dressed in his simple work uniform, his sleeves rolled up. He looked older, more confident, but calm. There was a peacefulness about him that pierced Sarah's heart more than anything. He had moved on, not with another woman, perhaps, but with life itself. Her heart pounded in her chest. She stood frozen outside the window, memories rushing back: his laughter, his kindness, the way he once held her hand as if she was his entire world. And she had thrown it all away. Taking a deep breath, Sarah walked in. The bell above the door chimed, and Mark looked up. His eyes widened. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, thick with years of unspoken pain. "Sarah," he finally said, his voice calm but distant. She swallowed hard. "Hi, Mark." He could see how fragile she looked, thinner, paler, her clothes plain. It was the first time he had seen her without makeup since they were together. She sat down slowly, her hands trembling. I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't even be here." "But I had to see you." Mark stared at her, not with anger, but with something heavier, the profound sadness that comes from knowing the person you once loved destroyed something you can never rebuild. "What happened to you, Sarah?" he asked gently. A weak laugh escaped her lips, quickly turning into a sob. "Everything. I lost everything, Mark. My money, my home, my friends. David, he lied to all of us. It was all a scam. He took my inheritance, my parents' life savings. I thought I was being so smart, chasing a better life." Mark looked down at his coffee. "And you found out money isn't everything." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You have no idea how much I regret it. Every single day, I think about what I did to you. I was so stupid. You loved me honestly, and I left you for something that wasn't even real." Mark didn't answer right away. His mind spun, caught between the past and the present. He remembered the sleepless nights, The months of heartbreak. The times he desperately wanted to call her just to ask why. Now, he finally had the answer, and it offered no comfort. "I don't know what you want me to say," he whispered. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said quickly. "I know I don't deserve it. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't even have food for tomorrow. I need help, Mark. Please." Her voice cracked on the last word. A raw plea from the depths of her despair. For a long time, Mark sat in silence. His heart was torn between compassion and self-respect. He had spent so long trying to heal, to stop caring, and now here she was broken, desperate, asking for the kindness she had once discarded so carelessly. He could walk away. He could finally get his closure and let her face the consequences of her choices, but that wasn't who he was. He sighed, stood up, and said quietly, "Come on." Sarah blinked, confused. "Where?" "There's a diner across the street. You look like you haven't eaten in days." Fresh tears filled her eyes this time, not from guilt, but from gratitude. She followed him, head down her steps slow. They sat in a small booth, the air filled with the smell of coffee and fried eggs. Mark ordered for them both. Sarah barely touched her food, too overwhelmed by shame. Finally, Mark spoke. "You don't need to explain anymore. I get it. Life hits hard. But Sarah, you need to understand something, too. I'm not the same man you left. I'm not waiting for you to come back." Sarah nodded slowly, the truth of his words settling in. "I know. I wanted to see you one last time. To say, I'm sorry. For real." Mark looked at her, and for the first time, there was no bitterness in his eyes, only quiet acceptance. "I believe you," he sighed softly. They finished their meal in silence. When they left, Mark gave her some money and told her where she could find temporary work at a friend's small shop. "Take this chance," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Start over, the right way, this time." Sarah's lips trembled. "You're still so kind, even after everything I did." Mark shook his head. "It's not about kindness, Sarah. It's about peace. I forgave you a long time ago for my own sake." As she walked away into the night, Sarah looked back just once. Mark was still standing there, hands in his pockets, the streetlight casting a faint glow around him. And in that moment, she understood. She had finally lost him, not because of David, not because of money, but because she had traded something priceless for something temporary. And that was a mistake she would care palpable. But something incredible began to happen over time. A slow, subtle transformation started deep within her. For the first time in years, Sarah wasn't pretending anymore. There was no fake smile she had to plaster on, no pressure to impress anyone, no image to uphold. It was just honest work, a newfound sense of humility, and a small but incredibly real peace that came from earning her own way, making her own bread. It was a peace she hadn't realized she desperately needed. Pause yet. Even with this newfound calm, Mark was never far from her thoughts. Every single day, she thought of him. Sometimes, she'd catch glimpses of him from afar, walking home from work, chatting with neighbors, just living his simple, honest life. And what truly struck her, what truly stung, was that he didn't look angry. He didn't look bitter. He looked free, and in a strange way, that hurt her more than anything. Seeing him thrive, seeing him move on, made her confront the depth of her own actions. Pause one rainy afternoon, a day that perfectly mirrored the storm brewing inside her. Sarah finally gathered all her courage. She knew what she had to do. She decided to visit him one last time. Her heart was absolutely pounding as she waited outside his apartment. When Mark finally opened the door, there was a moment of surprise. Yes, but not shock. It was almost as if he had known, deep down, that she might return someday. "Hey," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Can I come in?" Mark simply nodded, holding the door open. Pause. They settled onto the couch, the very same one where they used to sit for hours, sharing dreams and laughter years ago. The silence between them was thick, heavy with unspoken history, but surprisingly, it felt calm. No anger, no tension, just a quiet understanding. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I just wanted to thank you," she began, her voice still a little shaky, "for helping me when you didn't have to. You didn't owe me anything, Mark. And yet, you did." It was a genuine admission, a profound moment of gratitude. Mark offered a faint, gentle smile. "You needed help." "I couldn't turn away," he replied simply. No theatrics, no grand gestures, just pure, unadulterated kindness. Sarah looked down, shame washing over her. "I don't deserve that kindness," she confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "Not after what I did to you. I was blind, Mark. I thought money would make me happy. But I only found emptiness. I lost everything, including the one person who actually loved me." Her voice broke, a raw, exposed wound. Mark didn't interrupt. He just listened, a pillar of quiet strength. "I came here today because I wanted to say this in person," she continued, her voice gaining a fragile strength. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to take me back. I hope someday, when you think of me, it won't hurt anymore." It was a plea for his peace, not her own. Mark leaned back, his eyes soft understanding. "Sarah, it doesn't hurt anymore," he said, his voice calm and clear. "It used to, but not now. You see, I learned something important from all this. Sometimes love isn't about holding on, it's about letting go, even when it feels like it's breaking you." Pause. Sarah nodded, tears falling silently down her cheeks. "You've changed," she observed, her voice full of awe. "You're stronger now." He smiled gently. Pain does that to people. For a few moments, they simply sat in comfortable silence, listening to the soothing rhythm of the rain hitting the window pane. It was a moment of quiet reflection, a testament to the growth both had experienced. Then, Mark stood up and walked to the kitchen, returning with a small, unassuming box. "What's that?" Sarah asked, a flicker of curiosity in her tear-filled eyes. He handed it to her. Inside were old photographs, cherished memories of a time long past, the two of them smiling on a sunny beach, laughing over pizza boxers, sitting close in their old apartment, a lifetime ago. "I kept these for a long time," I sighed softly. "But I think it's time to let them go. I don't need reminders of the past anymore. You can keep them if you want." Sarah held the photos tightly, her hands trembling with a mixture of grief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mark walked her to the door. Just before she stepped out into the rainy afternoon, he spoke quietly, his words profound. "I hope you find peace, Sarah. Real peace. Not the kind that money buys, but the kind that comes from forgiving yourself." Sarah looked at him, her eyes glistening, understanding the depth of his words. "You really have a good heart, Mark," she said, her voice filled with regret and a newfound admiration. "I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me. I'll never forget that." And with those heavy words, she walked away slowly, under the soft rain, holding the small box of memories to her chest like it was all she had left in the world. Mark stood by the doorway, watching her disappear into the distance. There was no anger in his heart anymore, no bitterness, just a quiet understanding that some stories aren't meant to have happy endings, only lessons. He closed the door, took a deep breath, and smiled faintly to himself. Life had moved on. That night, Sarah carefully placed the photographs by her bedside. She stared at them until her tears finally ran dry, exhausted but somehow lighter. Then, for the first time in years, she whispered a prayer. Not for money, not for the superficial life she once chased, not even for Mark to return, just a simple one. "Thank you for giving me another chance to be better." Outside. The rain finally stopped. A pale morning light began to rise. Soft, gentle, and full of quiet hope. And that, my friends, brings us to the core of this incredible story. Love isn't truly tested by comfort or fleeting happiness. It's tested by loyalty, by unwavering commitment. Sarah chose money, believing it would bring her everything, and in the end, she lost everything that truly mattered. Mark, on the other hand, chose kindness, empathy, and ultimately, found a profound sense of peace. Pause, in the end, betrayal, heartbreak, and loss can teach us the real, enduring value of honesty, integrity, and genuine connection. Because, let's be real, no amount of wealth or fleeting fame will ever last longer or shine brighter than a truly good heart. And Mark's story is a testament to that powerful truth. What did you think of Sarah and Mark's journey? Have you ever had a moment where you realized what truly mattered, even if it was a painful lesson? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. I love reading all your insights. If you enjoyed this story and found value in its message, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Outro music fades in.